Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to SeptumSin versus the World Anime Anticlimax. Risen the we've risen the channel from the dead briefly, and I think this is appropriate for that as we talk about the undead for Kotobukijake's birthday with a selection that he will tell us about.
All right. Well, not exactly the undead, at least not in this version. But we are going to be talking about a series that originally aired back in 2005 and 2006, which was released here briefly by Genion before Genion disappeared. And it is directed by Shinichiro Kimura, and it's called Karin. Uh, the other name for it that Americans may know, because when they released the manga here, they apparently figured Karin wouldn't move units, so they renamed the manga Chibi Vampire. So that may be a name that also will ring some bells for people. This is a series about the unvampire Karin Maka and her family of vampires who live in Japan. And it's a very interesting show that inspires some very interesting reactions. But unfortunately has largely fallen by the wayside. Since the Genion releases went out of print, it has never been released in the States. So keep waiting for Discotech to announce that it'll come back, but we never know. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and go around and see everyone's reactions and first impressions to this one. And I'll start on my right here with Kroll. Kroll, I take it this is probably your first exposure to this series. And
Yeah,
what's your initial thought?
Yeah, it's definitely my first time watching it. Now the story is interesting. The story itself. I mean, I kind of like the story. That said, the acting, especially the main character, I wanted to throttle her every time she started crying and screaming, like constantly all through the damn thing. Like, come on!
Did you
I know
watch
she's
it?
supposed to be a 16-year-old girl, but come on!
Which language did you watch it in?
I speak English.
English. Okay, I was just curious because the dubs are different, but there are some similarities too.
Yeah, I only speak English. I only watch things in English.
Okay.
And I hate reading my TV, so never do dubs unless I don't have a choice. But yeah, anyways, yeah, the English version, and yeah, I don't know if there's another version that's better with the crying, but yeah, it's really freaking annoying. There's some cool characters. Her sister's pretty cool. She does cry once, but she cries like more like a normal little girl than the main character. You know, she's always whining and crying about everything. And then we have another voice actor is Weiner. Winner, but I call him Weiner because that's what the fuck he is. He's a whiner. All he does is whine and
All
cry.
out.
Literally cries as well. Paints to the side of blood. He's a vampire hunter. Yeah, okay. There's some major issues. I mean, the guy that she falls for may not have the best acting skills, but he's still better than everyone, most of the other people. Because no acting skills is still better than horrible acting skills, in my book. Yeah, people complained about Voltrons, and I think this was even worse than the kid in that, or the person that played the kid in that.
If only Pidge had played Karin.
It would have been better. It would have been better than this. I mean, not saying it would have been good, but it would have been better than this. This was just downright horrible. The screaming all the time. Like I said, the story was good. And I did binge it because I had to. Because I waited till too late. I was trying to get my computer back, which is still not back. I had to watch it on a phone.
Oh
But
my.
yeah, that I did. I had to go and find somewhere to watch the final episode because that wasn't where I was watching it. It wasn't the final episode wasn't on there. But I was like, I'm not gonna watch the whole thing and then not find out how it turns out at least. Because like I said, the story was good. You know, too bad the voice acting wasn't better. I mean, like I said, I would even take bad because it was horrible. The grandmother was cool. I do. There is one episode that I really enjoyed. I do have a favorite episode as well. So it wasn't a complete waste of time. It just, like I said, I didn't know what I would have liked it a hell of a lot better if they'd just gotten someone who didn't cry so much and not cry so much. It's so loud and horrible, Just, I don't know. I just don't understand. The Japanese seem to do that a lot, and that's one of the things I said in the beginning why I didn't like anime, because every anime that I'd seen, like they're always like crying or screaming loud and stuff, and it's just obnoxious to me. you know. So yeah, I mean, as far as the anime style goes, the drawings and stuff was cool. I liked it. I got into it. It was cool. I didn't have an issue with that at all. But just the sound. I mean, if I watched it with the sound off and just made my own, made up what they were saying myself, I might enjoy it more. Because, like I said, everything else is good. So I can't give it a failing grade, but give it a C. It would have gotten much better if the sound was good. So I guess that's not too bad.
All right. Very good. So, Brandon, we'll move over to you. Is this your first go around with this, and what is your initial take?
Oh yeah, never heard of it before. But I remember seeing it back when I was reading an anime magazine. I had heard, oh, they're adapting this manga to an anime. I'd never read the manga. And I said, this looks interesting. So I obtained it in the way I knew how, and the only way I knew how back in those days, which we won't talk about. But I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed it a lot when I first watched it. And then I ended up getting the manga and a couple of the light novels and stuff like that. And I enjoyed that much more. And I was like, well, man, this series is so much better without that winter character in it.
Yes, it is.
That too.
So, watching it this time around, I must have had a much higher tolerance for a good dub than I do these days. For a bad dub than I do these days. Still nowhere near as bad as Cardcaptor Movie 2 or Usayetsu or Beautiful Dreamer, as far as I'm concerned, dub-wise. But still, Karin's voice and Wenner's voice are the two big offenders. And I think I got desensitized after a while because I'd say by the time I was hitting episode 4 or 5, I was finally able to kind of tune her voice into the background and pay attention to the real characters.
You lucky bastard.
So actually, Kroll brought up an interesting concept. Would this, in your mind, meet the Voltron standard for dubbing?
I don't know which one was more annoying, Pidge or her. I keep thinking, because I keep imagining Karin doing her lines in that like nasal way, it's so embarrassing.
That was too good of an impersonation.
And you know what? You know what though? Maybe I would have liked that better because I'd have been laughing my butt off every time she spoke.
Or give Winner that voice.
But yeah. But as far as things go, I would say this one was okay. Manga way better, but it's not as good as I remembered it. Maybe it should have been buried in the past.
Much like the grandmother.
Okay, that get you caught up there?
I'm all good.
All right. Brittany, is this your first go around with this, and what were your thoughts?
I've watched one or two episodes before, but this is the first time watching it all the way through. And congratulations, Jacob. You have given me a new low for anime in all general.
Really?
While others may say just the voice acting's bad, I beg to differ. The animation is horrific. There are literally moments of animation that are beyond amateurish at this point that you get better out of a high schooler's animation work that I've seen in this thing. The CGI is horrendous. The voice acting is non-existent. I'm going to say it's non-existent because the actors aren't acting. Only one person actually acts, and it's Usui. Everybody else, nobody acts. They're just saying their lines like this and reading their lines. Oh no! And that is not acting. That is literally just reading your lines.
If the dude who plays Winter normally talks like that, I have to worry about him.
No, he talks like this! So he's speaking his lines like this all the time!
I beg to differ. I think the sister acts. She's the one kind of dark and gloomy, and her voice says it dark and gloomy. So, unless the actress is dark and gloomy too.
Well, the problem with a melatonin character, which the sister is, you get them dime a dozen in anime, and they're the easiest characters to act because you just have a stiff voice and just read the lines out straight. So you don't really have to act it. And
either way, I like her.
True, but the fact that we get every character doing that, it's just like, okay, it's annoying now. And I did watch one episode in sub. The sub is much better from what I could hear, but I could not hear Winter's voice in the sub, so I cannot vouch for Winter.
Oh, you just did the first episode, or?
The second episode was subbed for me.
Okay.
So I only got to hear the first few voice actors, none of the later voice actors. A lot of the voice cast in the dub I recalled are also the same voice cast we hit on another review we did, which was Gregory Horror Show. Most of the same cast here.
They
For
got
the dub.
Gregory Horror Show a little bit. It was definitely not as reading of the lines.
And this was done by JC Staff. JC Staff is either hit or miss. In fact, in 2 months, we will be reviewing another JC Staff film or series. That is very much not a miss. As far as the animation-wise goes, but when JC Staff misses, they miss hard. I reviewed one that was just as bad animation-wise, but not nearly as bad as this because I'm seeing characters pop into the scene, which is, unless you're doing a magical teleportation into the scene, should not happen. So, yeah, I'm glad this is dead and buried.
So you would say this does not meet the Voltron standard?
Oh God, no! Voltron's far better than this.
Okay, all right. Was that
Yeah.
weird for now, or?
That's it for me for now. I mean, yeah.
Okay. All right, Roger. Is this your first time with this series, and what is your initial thought?
Well, no, this I watched this, and first time I watched this was kind of like in in a certain way I'm not supposed to talk about. Second time, I of course watched it on DVD through Genon. Of course, I also watched read the manga as well. I'm kind of like maybe I'm not quite as harsh as everybody else has been on it, but Karin does suffer from having two faces to it. And I wish they kind of went with one face. The two faces, either a comedy or horror. One, a horror aspect or a comedy aspect. To combine horror and comedy is kind of I guess it's not an easy thing to do, and they really JC staff have really had failed on that. It's kind of like one of those things that you have to go with the flow with the kind of show. JC staff, of course, I'm pretty fond of. Watched quite a bit of their anime. I've seen my fair share of doldrum anime. My God, man, I've seen my fair share. This show, it doesn't really. I don't, in my opinion, of course, just I hope I can ask for forgiveness and all that. I don't consider it a bad anime. It's just a flawed anime because there's parts of it that's really interesting to watch. Just the other parts are not so interesting. Let's say, the introduction of Winter was kind of like oh man, just like seeing the Jar Jar Binks in Star Wars. It was just kind of like in there and just watch the bull chase, in the China shop. It was a grating thing to watch. Now, of course, I've only watched this in Japanese. I know I just don't like most dubs. If at this time frame, I hardly ever watched anything dubbed. I did a little more dubbing these days because there's more quality dubs that's coming out. But because of the way that things happened back in the past, I've never watched this in dub. But in the sub side, there's quite a bit of screeching, particularly from Winter was kind of a grating thing to deal with. The rest of the voices were all right. It's a show that really needed to go in a direction like the manga did. Was some a kind of like a slice, almost like a slice of life with vampires and weirdisms to it. The show really does suffer a bit, but I tell you what, if you get through that, if you could just just forgive the bad 10 episodes, it's not it definitely has its charms. It's a show that's not for everybody. And definitely, it's something I'm looking forward not to watch for the next 10 years or 15 years. It's one of those kind of anime. But again, I want to emphasize my opinion is not like a category 1 anime like I would say with Genocyber and Cybernetics Guardian and the other kinds of ones like they can't. That's one they just should be forgotten in the annals of time. It's just an anime that it really is a niche anime, man. It's I don't know if anybody would ever be interested in releasing this thing again because the way the show is presented.
The weirdest shit keeps getting re-released. You know what I mean? Yes. You never know.
Well, it looked like somebody would talk about the Gregory Horror Show.
Yeah.
That was pretty much the most unique anime I've seen. Thanks to everybody here. But finally, I did watch that. I was wondering what the heck I was watching with this thing. It wasn't quite so. So blaringly, spotty and Karin. But I tell you what, one of the best parts of the anime was those, in between outros. They show, between the first half of the movie of the anime episode and the second anime of the episode, every single catch one was something different, interesting to look at. So I guess that's where all the money went to.
I will admit, when it comes to eye catches, this is one of the more varied shows out there, and I like the eye catches. I think they're a fun part of it.
Kind of spunky.
But
I like the puppet show thing that they did.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the beginning. They showed what happened with the vampires and all that.
Right.
It's just this thing is so odd. This show could be, at one point it could be, sickeningly, humorous, trying to get humor out, but then it gets really interesting when the dark parts come around. It's really, really interesting.
Okay. That's
good for me. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. So now that we've heard some rather bruising commentary on this show, and I know it'll only get worse. Karin is a show that I freely admit, I think Roger came closest to hitting the nail on the head. This is a flawed show. I make no bones about it. It's a flawed show. I have read, I don't think I mentioned, but the manga is by Yuna Kagasaki. I have read the manga, and I actually really like it. I think it's a very solid manga. It's a little bit flawed too, and it's partly what Roger was just talking about, trying to balance humor and horror. But I think they do a better job in the manga. A lot of times with these shows, the anime feels the need to tweak the comedy to a high level, and that doesn't always work. This was probably one of those examples. But one thing that they did was they did a pretty strictly faithful adaptation up until about, I guess, maybe episode 4 of the show. And then they went off the rails. There are certain parts that are very much, the whole thing with the grandmother was at least tangentially similar. But if I remember correctly, I think she showed up after the departure so I think that was handled a little differently. And the whole thing with Anju's awakening was handled differently. And I'll get to that later. But they had a completely different plot in the manga. And Winter is an anime original. And he sucks. Winter sucks. I hate Winter Sinclair with a passion because he is one of the reasons this show is as weak as it is. And he is terribly overacted in both languages. I did play enough of the English dub to get a feel for him. He is terribly overacted in the Japanese, and he's just terribly acted in the English. There's terrible. It's I differ from Brittany in this sense because, again, if any normal person talks like that, they need help. So I think he was trying to act. Not very well.
That's the lines and the way it was presented, and whatever heck it is. I guess the voice actor had to do something. But man,
let's put it this way: anybody name themselves a winner or name their kids winner, you need help.
Well, and the grandfather clearly shows that their family needs help. I mean. And I will admit this, no one has really mentioned Victor. Victor is a pretty terrible name. Well, I mean, no, a lot of people name their kids Victor. But there's a theme there, you can tell. But
well, I mean, the characters' names are somatic. I mean, we kind of addressed this in the chat at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Now the dove has her say. They call her Karin,
yeah,
which we have to state that they flat out call her Karin, but it is Karin. It's a supernatural name. A Karin is a form of a vampire.
And also,
yeah, when I heard them saying Karen, I'm like, hey, they're calling her Karen.
Yeah, Karin is also her siblings have Japanese names. Ren and Anju have Japanese names. But Karin kind of works double duty. And of course her parents came over from Europe, and they're named Henry and Carrera. I mean, they have European names, and they still have their European last name, Marker, but the kids go by the Nipponicized Maka. It's the same name, but just a different version. But yeah, the Sinclairs, that whole plot line is entirely original to the anime, and it really does drag it down. And I make no bones about that. The original plot line had something to do with the decrease in vampire fertility. Karin was some sort of there was a reason for her being an unvampire that made her a target with the vampire community. And that's another thing. The vampire community is a big player in the manga, and it's all but forgotten in the show. So that's one thing that's disappointing.
I mean, you guys talk about the difficulty of humor and horror. There really isn't a difficulty. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And you guys want to say, oh, it's hard. It shouldn't be. Horror and humor come from the same place. Laughter comes from horror as well. And so it's very simple to do.
I love horror comedy. It's just, it does require some finesse, and they were lacking.
It requires that. But this anime needed a plot, and I kept reaming this series to get a plot. And honestly, in my opinion, it didn't get a plot until the grandmother showed up.
Yeah. And there were plots. There were little plots, and we'll get to those in a minute. The winter thing, I think, was an attempt to give it a plot that would not go into such weird places, I guess. But because it was a more conventional plot. But the problem is the winter plot paints the show into a corner. And this is my biggest personal thing. I will say this is the biggest thing I hold against that plot line, and the biggest flaw that I'll give with the show. And again, we may go into more depth later in the discussion, but I'll just go ahead and say the final episode, they jumped the shark. They jumped the shark big time on that.
Oh boy, yeah.
And it was totally nonsensical. And there was one moment in the final episode that's one of my favorite moments in the whole series, and it was made possible by an anime-only change. But we'll get to that when we get to it. But anyway, I should backtrack and say why we did this show, since everyone loves it so much. Because, again, this was a birthday selection. Karin is a very, very, very important series for me. Even if it is flawed, even if it could be better, should be better. Brandon did introduce it to me years ago, and I like vampire stories, and I am intrigued by different takes. Now, intrigued by different takes, mileage may vary. I will happily jump on the Twilight bashing bandwagon, but I have seen different takes that really, really intrigued me. And this one, I think I was introduced to this maybe around the time that I was introduced to Rosario and Vampire. I think they were more or less contemporaries, or I think Rosario came out a year or two after this, actually. What's that?
Let's go ahead and say, check out Rosario Vampire. Far better series.
Rosario is a far better. It's a better anime and a far better manga. The Rosario manga is great.
That's another one. The manga's world's better.
The Royal Vampire, there's a greater amount of separation of quality. The manga's, my God level, and the anime was like
the soundtrack. One thing Rosario has over this in spades, Rosario almost feels like it exists to sell the music. The music kicks freaking ass in that show. The music in this show mostly kind of is ass, except for a few parts. And we'll get to those as we get to them again.
Far more plot. There's far more plot in Rosario Vampire.
There is. But this one does start with a similar premise of a misfit who desperately needs someone from the other world, if you will, to make things work. But the one reason why I mentioned Rosario and I mentioned this one, why they're so important for me is because, again, they came along at almost the same time, and both of them presented vampires not as the undead, which is the traditional Western way of looking at it, not as a curse. They're like living, breathing. It's a different species. And that was a concept that I don't think I had ever seen before. I don't think I've seen that in Western. I think I have since then. But usually the Western approach is more that it's a curse, or they're, undead, they're demonic, they're, something like that. But in this one, there's a family of vampires. It's a family unit. They're breeding and producing more vampires. It's a different approach. And I was very intrigued by that. And Rosario does the same thing, but Rosario kind of threw that into a whole multi-monster mix and kind of played the same card with several different monsters. But this one, and that became extremely influential to me. I mean, I am not good at making time to write. But the whole idea of including specifically vampires and Yuki-onna as a separate species, I can relate that to these two anime and manga. The other thing is the idea of vampiric taste. I don't think I'd ever seen that before, and I'm not sure I've seen it since. The idea that vampires have a specific trait that's like fine wine for them, and if they get anything else, it's shit, And in this one, you got Henry's taste is for pride, Carrera's is for jealousy, Ren is for stress. In this version, Anju's is for she's for jealousy, Carrera is for liars. And even though Karin is not a vampire in the traditional sense, she still reacts, and she reacts to unhappiness, which is unfortunate. But Elda reacts to love, like that's her thing. And it's an interesting idea that when they feed, they take that trait out, which in most cases that makes the person happier and better and healthier and whatever. Although in Elda's case, they take out the love, and well, that doesn't always have good results. So it's an interesting concept that was utilized well in the series. And again, this is the only series I know that's really gone full tilt with that concept. And then the concept of an unvampire in the first place, I can't recall anywhere else I've seen that. So it's a great concept. What's that?
Mobius, the living vampire.
Yeah, Morbius? Whatever.
Actually, Morbius was a very messy eater, though.
Right. But at any rate, so those are probably some of the reasons why. And even though I just dissed the music a few minutes ago, the final thing, the ending theme, Mohitotsu no Birthday, I like that. It's a really nice song. It's cute. It's catchy. I remember it. I love it. The opening theme, Scarlet, is a hot mess. It is a wreck of a theme, and it annoys me.
The opening theme. The problem is they play sound effects over it as they're going.
Well, my problem with it is the lack. I hesitate to use the word music. Like lyrically and melodically, it's not bad. It's what passes for music. It just sounds like noise to me. But you're right. There's a lot of sound effects too, which is weird. The overall background music's okay in the series, But anyway, so that's kind of. There's also a little bit of the history of this. Was I think the first manga that I really actively collected, and I think it's the first manga I completed, both reading and collecting. It's the well, as I've said many times on this channel, I picked up the individual DVDs of the series and then pre-ordered the box set, and I gave the DVDs over to Brandon, and now both versions are expensive as shit because the thing is so out of print. Which is great, and I wish you luck, Roger, in replacing that disc. I still don't know what happened with that, but
That's my surprise. open up 15 years later, say, hey, let's open up and whoa.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the one and only anime pre-order I did. No, actually, I think I pre-ordered the Cowboy Bebop movie. But other than that, I think the only anime pre-order I did from MovieStop, may they rest in peace, was this one. And it came out probably 3 months before Genian closed their doors. I mean, it was one of their last releases. So rare as shit. So I don't mind bragging on it.
Good reason for getting on to close their doors. In my opinion.
Well,
this was the nail in the coffin. It killed them.
I still think Discotheque will get to this one of these days because they are putting out some weird random shit. But
Discotheque, please, no. If you're seeing this, no. Do not.
Oh, man. Or maybe Pied Piper will do it. And then if they do another Kickstarter, I'm backing it. But anyway, it's long and short of it is flawed show. I know it's not to all taste, but it does have tremendous nostalgic value for me, sentimental value for me. And, you know, I'm glad y'all gave it a go, you know. And this time I did watch, this I think was my third watch in the Japanese. I did watch 2.5 episodes in the English. The final episode, my player just would not play the whole episode in English. I guess it got tired of that dub and didn't want any more of it. And one thing that I will say, I kind of hate to, because Karin is kind of an important character in this series. She does not improve dramatically in either language. The acting is much better in the Japanese, but she is whiny in both versions. I have to admit, she is a very whiny protagonist, and it kind of grated on my nerves at times. So that's saying something. But I like her. She's just whiny. So that's better than Winter, because I just don't, there's nothing good about him. But but the other characters, for the most part, I like. I love Elda and I love Anju. The two of them, I absolutely love those two. And, you know, some of the other characters are fun too. But anyway, now that we've done our intros, I think I'll go ahead and start. I guess I'll go ahead and start with like a character rundown. We've talked a little bit about the characters, but this will give, I guess, also everyone a chance to sound off on anything they have or haven't said on those. And naturally, we'll start with the central pair, Karin Maka and Kenta Usui. Usui Kenta. Karin is the unvampire. We talked about her. Usui is a normal guy who has suffered tremendous misfortune and tends to have resting, leave me the hell alone face. That tends to scare a lot of people who don't know him.
He should get together with the guy from Toradora.
Right. The two of them, actually, he has a lot in common with that dude. Actually, a lot in common.
Oh.
We'll need to do Toradora one of these days. But Karin has very little in common with Taiga. I don't see them being that simpatico.
Taiga would beat the crap out of her.
Yes, she would.
Please, you're forgetting the main character in Toradora's, or the main male character at least had one beneficial difference, which is the bird.
The bird was awesome, yes. But they also both had the way too young and way too hot mom. Although this one at least worked hard. The other one, I don't know what was.
The other one worked it trying to be hot. That's what she worked.
Yeah.
Technically, his mother could have worked what the other one's mother worked, because she worked at a host club. I think
Yeah.
his mother, with her charisma, could have easily worked at a host club and done
Well, no, I think they had an episode in this one where she came close to doing something like
Yeah.
that, and she was too good. Yeah, so basically, again, Karin, you have the unvampire who's the middle child of a family of vampires. They all live the normal vampire life, but because she is not affected by the sun, doesn't particularly like the night, likes being active in the day, she likes pretty much being a normal teenager and does everything in her power to be one. She just has this problem, which happens once a month, of having to release blood. I know there's some symbology there, and I think they were afraid to go into it in the anime. And then, but they went into it more in the manga. And then Kenta again. Obviously, his mother is also Fumi Kenta. She had him when she was a teen because her charisma is through the friggin' roof. Guys go insane around her, and she can't hold a job because of it. And so the two of them are scraping by because she can't hold a job. And so he has had to be ultra reliable, responsible man around the house pretty much since he was a kid. And because Karin reacts to misfortune when she meets him, she reacts very strongly and tries to solve it at first by running away from him, which makes him more unhappy, which, nice little spiral going on there. But anyway, what are y'all's basic thoughts other than Karin's whininess? What are y'all's basic thoughts about these two major characters?
I think they did a pretty good job of keeping pretty close to the manga at that part. I do feel like there was some subtlety lost that they had in the manga version of this, so it made it slightly more annoying. Like she just went immediately into runaway.
Right.
But I thought it was probably the most accurate to the manga that the series got, and it was a good introduction to the characters. But I admit I was very annoyed at the main character throughout the first couple episodes, and that part did not help that at all.
All right.
The best part of the manga and the anime to me is the relationship between Karin and Kenta. The realization that Kenta had that Karin may not be human. The idea of Karin trying to get away from her the blood increases by making him happy and having a relationship. It's pretty much something that's pretty darn good. It was really interesting in the manga, and again, for me, it gives some help with the anime as well. It's just too bad in the anime they didn't really focus on the romance part that much. A little smatterings here and there, but they should have really focused on that aspect rather than the other wackiness to it.
Right. They did play it a little more chastely than they could have, that's for sure. But they
I feel like Karin was played as more of an airhead here than she was in the manga.
Yeah.
She wasn't quite as bad of an airhead in the manga. She was more of an airhead than her siblings, but God, she came across as stupid in this anime.
Yeah, times.
I don't think she was whiny either. I think in the manga she wasn't nearly as whiny and screechy. She was mostly concerned about her family, her blood increases, and trying to make Kenta happy. So yeah.
I should certainly hope that the manga wasn't screeching at you as you read it. But
all right, a question here for because you guys read the manga, I have not. I know Ron hadn't either. Here's my question: are they at all unique in look in the manga? Because one of the main problems I have here is something that is notable for all anime and tells you a good or bad anime. It's what's called the shadow effect of your characters. If you can't point out your characters from just their shadow, then they're more than likely just a dull anime. and nothing's really unique outside of the dad's hair, Karin's dad's hair.
Henry has
that makes any of them stand out.
Henry has very unique hair in this. It's very amusing. I would say, and you guys can tell me if you agree or not, the look of the anime is similar to the look of the manga. If you read them and you read it and watch it, you don't feel like, what the hell were they thinking? This doesn't look like the manga. You know, there is a similarity. But I see what you're saying. Like, I would disagree as far as it being original for the most part.
It's not so much unoriginal. It's more, if all your characters look alike, you don't really give a crap about the characters.
Well,
I feel like I could tell them apart. Like the worst offender for me, manga wise, was Pandora Hearts. I couldn't get into that because everyone freaking looked the same. But in this one, no, I thought they were distinct enough. Except, of course, Karin and Elda are supposed to look identical.
I mean, Karin's hair was a lot more exaggerated in the manga. They kind of made it go to, I mean, you can see where in the picture in the background, Karin's hair kind of goes to a point. They decided to lengthen the points a little bit more in the manga. So she was definitely one that stuck out. Now, do I think Karin, if I look at Karin and Anju side by side, I'd say they look identical in the anime and I couldn't tell apart? No. They look very different.
No, I mean, they're going to look different in the anime once you get color to it. The problem is it unique enough? Are the characters unique enough to draw you in and be like, it's that moment of, do you have that 3-second draw from when you turn on that channel, see it, and be like, do I really want to watch this serial? No. So, I mean, you need to have something that pulls you in a little bit with that unique character look.
Well,
and a lot of
he's very distinct looking.
Which one?
Boogie-kun.
Yeah, well, I really didn't give a crap about Boogie-kun. I wanted to know why he exists and why he exists on his own.
That actually is answered in the manga, and they totally glossed over it in the anime. You kind of
that was the only thing I really would have been like, okay, this would be a cool one-shot episode.
Right. Well, they kind of went into it. The Anju's awakening, I think you see the part where she walks out the room and like he goes limp. And that was, I think, supposed to signify her becoming an adult vampire. But what they really did not go into, they do tell in the manga, all those dolls, her room is full of dolls. They're all familiars and they all contain spirits. And Boogie-kun was the spirit of a serial killer.
Oh, yeah. And Boogie-kun did not go away when she came of age.
Right.
It was they were there to stay, unfortunately for them. Which they're all pretty much evil people, though. So
right. It was partly to show that she was a much stronger, like she had the potential to be an extremely powerful vampire. And I think they showed her having all those familiars as like an example of that. But was there no time on? I had forgotten that part of it. So he still remained active.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot.
He was still active at the end.
Right.
Well, he'd technically gone away at the last episode. When she left it, he was talking less and less, and then eventually the idea that they signify, because by the time they reach that point in the anime, they were beyond the manga at that point.
Oh yeah. And
It's outer space.
So they were kind of making it up.
The plot and said, just forget about the plot. Just make our own plot. Just do it this way.
There
do it our way.
Actually, there was one thing I gotta give Winter for. Winter, I don't like Winter as a character, but I did kind of like the concept that they established with the grandmother and the love story there, that it wasn't the way she thought it was, and the way it connected to Winter and his grandfather. That I liked. It just get rid of Winter, keep the grandfather, and have the grandfather come in later, and it would have been okay as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it was an overused plot.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, I decided to go with that because it was more familiar, and it was a mistake.
Yeah.
But
if we're still talking about characters a little bit here,
yeah.
I really what didn't get me at all with Usui's mom was, she's had people coming after her. I didn't see it with her. She looked bland and dull. And but you can think she's cute, but I don't see this, horrible. The only way I can say it is to use the Seinfeld joke of the shiksta, where the people are drawn to her. I just don't see it with the character look. I really don't. A lot of these characters, it's showed. I'm expecting some show here, and not just being told that it's there. Being told, oh, this is the person that likes it. They kind of need to reflect that, character-wise, and it's a poor character design, in my opinion. That really just makes it very lackluster.
Okay.
Oh, well, I guess.
Actually, that's. I don't know if anyone still had any thoughts on Karin and Kenta. I keep wanting to go with. I don't know why with him I always keep wanting to use his last name.
Ray, what? Usui?
Yeah, Usui. But if anyone had any further thoughts on them, but also as far as Fumio, I mean, she we do see something early on where Karin ends up biting her. Basically, Ren forces the situation because he wants to find out what her taste is. And she has this total transformation where she goes from doom and gloom to always look on the bright side of life, peppy, walking on sunshine, and Usui is completely thrown for a loop. He has no idea who this woman is.
And see, right there, that's a plot point that they should have gone with. That's a plot point they should have gone with. They did it in Disney's what was it? The Emotions movie.
You're talking about was it the
Inside Out? Inside Out. Yeah, they did it in Inside Out. The importance of sadness, the importance of being upset. Yeah. They could have done that here, but they didn't. They just made everybody happy, and that solved their solutions. No, you're going to being internally happy does not mean you're solved. Your problems are solved.
Well, they kind of do talk about it because they show that it bothered Usui, and it made Karin not want to do that again because she didn't want to bother him. But there is some truth to the idea that if you expect failure, it may happen. But if you expect it, but you basically you have to expect success for there to be any chance of it. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think like when she had that go get 'em drive, she was doing better, but it still wasn't enough. It didn't solve their problems. But I think you're right that they could have done more with that than they did. That was kind of they kind of I think they let that specific one play out pretty well, but they didn't really go beyond that into other characters or whatever. Like when Maki gets bitten, Tokito Maki, Karin's friend, they
Yeah.
kind of handled that in like an episode. They did almost nothing with it, and
Yeah.
that
It would have been perfect to go in with the vampire's abilities
yeah,
to do that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
Maki was sadly very one tone, and I did like where they went with the jealousy a little bit because at least it gave her more of a personality.
Right.
She was just like the optimistic friend. That was it. And she was
The best
she was
friend.
a lot better in the manga, but even in the manga, she was still kind of one tone.
And actually, I guess this is as good a time as any to get to what they did with Anju, because Maki was involved both times. Because am I remembering correctly that she was the first person Anju bit in the manga as well?
I did not get that far in my reread.
Okay. I can't. I think. Roger? Do you remember?
What was the question?
Do you remember was Tokito Maki the first person Anju bit in the manga as well? I think
I don't remember. I don't. It's been a while. I don't remember her. I don't remember that. I just don't. It's been such a long time that.
Because one of the biggest differences between the two, other than changing the entire plot and the main supporting characters, was that when Anju awoke, her taste was different. In the manga, her taste was for loneliness, which gave her immense drive to want Karin to be with Usui, because she didn't want her sister to be lonely, not just because it was her sister and she loved her, but that would have really bothered her, just straight up. But she also, loneliness ended up being her thing. And I think she did bite Maki because Maki was experiencing loneliness as well. I feel like that was part of it, but I could be remembering wrong. But in the anime, her taste is for jealousy. And it's one of the few changes I think that actually worked well. And one of the reasons why, again, they could have explored this more, but Maki was very jealous of Karin and Usui's relationship, even though she put up a big front about it. But what really drove her over the top, and this was the one part where Winter had some value, was for whatever reason, Maki liked Winter. I don't know why. I don't know what she saw in him. No account for taste, as it were.
Yeah, love is deaf, dumb, and blind.
He was so hung up on Karin, he kept calling her Karin's friend. That was it. He
I know.
called her-
She must have said her name. My name is Maki. Maki.
Yes.
Sorry, my name is Maki. Like 100 times throughout the show. Like it
And
was
I
just
did get
constantly. It was kind of funny. It was kind of a trope
I
that
did
he
get
always
some
called her.
jokes.
Karen's friend and the sidekick is what he always called her.
Yeah. I did get some chuckles out of that, especially as she became more, as she and Winter kind of did get closer, even though neither of them really realized it. She would be like pulling him by the ear and all that kind of stuff, and that amused me because it made Winter suffer a little bit. But
Not as bad as we
but-
were listening to him, though.
But yes, they could have done a lot more with the aspect of having Anju bite her. They could have done a lot more with that.
They could have done a lot more suffering for Winter.
Yes,
Way
yes.
more suffering.
They could have done more suffering for Winter, and that would have been. Actually, Yeah. I was just trying to think of other ways they could have done it. There were some, definitely.
Chinese ancient torture.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't like even Winter's design.
Hang them up by the fingernails.
I mean, wearing a big thing with a big W for Winter on it, it's just, God, it was dopey.
Winter's design outside of the flashy costume is very just generic. In fact, seeing the one that Brandon loved to show in the picture of him with the meat at the beginning of his introduction reminded me of another anime, which is what I believe what boys do in their lives.
The daily lives of boys.
And daily lives of boys, of high school boys, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a scene where a guy has the same sort of meat cutting away at it, walking away. Literally looks like exactly like Winter. Literally, spit image.
Winter
So
is
I mean,
very much the bland, generic pretty boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
They could have made Winter an interesting character without turning him into Kuno.
They tried.
Well, no. It's Kuno with the voice of Kermit the Frog. All right.
Yeah, it's. But I mean, and having the costume design, I didn't mind the costume except for the big old letters that represent him. It's like the grandfather. I'm supposed to take him seriously, but he's wearing a big old letter on his front to represent his name. And I'm just like, yeah,
was a big V. What's V for victory? Because his name is Winter is W, but V is from what?
Right.
So I just I thought that they could have done so much better with that. If they'd made Winter into a more serious character,
it could have been B for Baka.
Well, I mean, he would have been a much more entertaining rival. You could still take a serious character and play it for laughs occasionally, but if you made him more competent and much more of a threat, then they could have done something with it better.
Yeah, like you said, Tadawaki Kuno, or again, any of those guys, Shutaro Mendo, or any of them, they're just ridiculous enough, but they're not completely ridiculous, It's like this guy's just completely ridiculous, and he doesn't have enough eccentricity to make him stand out.
They're effective ridiculousness.
Why did all the girls just follow over him too?
Right. Well, again, bland, generic, pretty boy. They're all supposed to,
No, it was really also the mother. Okay, so the mother looked kind of decent looking, but it was like everywhere she goes, all the guys are just looking at her like she's the hottest thing in the world. And I'd say she was cute, but she's definitely not the hottest thing around. And they just act like
I think they did say. I feel like they did say at some point that she does have sort of almost a power. Like it's not just strictly she is hot. They kind of hint that she actually does have maybe like some sort of crazy pheromones or something.
It's the Shiksta power, like I said from Seinfeld, where they you had people inexplicably drawn to you.
Yeah. It's like and again, I guess to kind of bring it back to Rosario, there's like a whiff of succubus about her, even though she's not one. That's the implication, is that she has a similar effect on a more normal scale, if you will. But yeah, I admit, she's not earth-shattering. I mean, the succubus from Rosario is much more traditionally hot.
She's a succubus,
right? But actually, most of the females in Rosario are more traditionally hot.
The one on Lost Girl was pretty hot. That's not
and then of course when you get into Talavru, I admit Lala is much more traditionally hot than these. But you got everyone's got their own kick. I personally like cute, But anyway, now speaking of parents, we definitely got to talk about Henry and Carrera Macher. Brittany already mentioned Henry's unique hairstyle. I love
Wolverine.
Henry. To me, he's hilarious. And they make such a great dysfunctional couple.
Hey, too.
What's that?
Okay, it's been a while since I've read the manga and I've watched the anime at this point. Did they do the whole bit at the library where he's helping her study and the father keeps venturing it out during the day and making excuses as to why he's at the library?
I think that was anime only, but he was an overprotective father in the manga. Yeah,
I did find that one very amusing where he was always like, yes, I'm just taking an interest in reading. Yes.
Right. He's never done that before, but
and then he complained about reading, and he was reading out loud, and she's like, shut up, and he just keeps reading, and he reads out loud.
Right. And of course, Carrera's weapon of choice is that slipper.
Or when Maki decides to stay over for a sleepover, and Karin's mother works with Anju to create a meal, which looks spectacular but tastes horrid.
Did it look spectacular?
Oh, the meal.
That is my favorite episode in the entire series.
I just thought it was hilarious how both these people who cannot taste are the ones trying to cook this meal.
Right. Well, in fairness, Anju did help Karin cook a lot. She just can't taste, but she was, I think, able to walk them through the procedure of, I think you should do this. I think you should. Carrera would have been clueless on her own. But, you even have that nice little image in the closing credits where Karin is baking a cake and Anju's helping her, so it's like, she spent some time in the kitchen. She just, without being able to. Well, actually, that's another thing. Anju can taste until her awakening.
Yeah.
So it's right around then that she loses that ability. She just doesn't have any reason to have a taste that would be what you might call simpatico with your average human, I guess you might say.
Well, Maki said it hit the spot, so she didn't seem to mind the taste of it.
But
acting like it was going to kill them.
Right. And overall, I will admit, and again, I'll open up after I throw this out. We'll go ahead and mention as well the older brother Ren is a smarmy, womanizing tool who his taste is for stress. So he has a habit of going after college-age women who, of course, who's going to be more stressed than a college-age woman? And he just loves them up for a few days and moves on to the next. But then kind of strings them along. He lets them get uneasy and doubtful and stressed, and then he comes back to them, and like I said, he's a complete tool. And his sisters are kind of horrified by his behavior. And then you got Elda, the grandmother, who eventually makes her grand appearance. You come to find out that Carrera had sealed her in her crypt successfully for about 20 years. What's up?
I thought it was 200 years.
And Elda, of course, is pretty much Karin's spitting image, except for two things. She has much, much longer hair and much, much smaller boobies. And she actually is very upset with Carrera because she knows exactly where Karin got him from. But between all of that, what's that?
Her grandmother grabbed her boobs, and her best friend would grab them. Say, "Oh, I wish I had like this, and they're so big." And she's like, "Ah."
Right. That's a pretty common anime trope. You get a character built like Karin, she's going to get pawed by other women. But at any rate, I just want to throw out there that one of the things I really do like about the show is the family dynamic of the Marker clan. I really feel like they all play well off each other, and they all. It's a good mix, in my opinion. But I'll throw it out there, see y'all's take on that idea.
I'm letting other people speak before I speak on this one.
I mean, I do like how some of the things work off of each other. The brother annoys me, but I did really like the part at the as they were wrapping up, and
yes,
they and Andrew had rounded up almost all the women he had been messing with, and was getting ready to feed on them for jealousy, but not before they took a little piece of him out.
I was saving that. That was my favorite thing that was changed from the manga, was because her taste is now jealousy. She sets Ren up. And it's glorious.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
But the family dynamic to me is not, it's a lot of tropes that I've seen before. I mean, overprotective father. The mother's a little bit more unique in my opinion because she's kind of just brash and harsh. But, Anju is the typical monotone female character that I've seen millions of times in anime.
The flat act lowly goth.
Yeah, so, and Karin is the, this one kind of the bimbo. But I guess they play off enough of each other.
Well, one that I was particularly thinking of is when Elda does awaken from her slumber, and everyone kind of expects that Carrera just like, she keeps saying, why can't we just kill her? It would be easier just to kill her. But what's surprising is that Anju's right there with her.
But Mama, I don't want to.
And then, yeah. And Henry makes up the point of, well, she might know something. She's been around for hundreds of years. She might know how to help Karen. And Carrera's like, okay, very well. We'll leave her alive for now. And Anju's like, well, we can kill her after, right? And Carrera's like, of course. I thought it was funny.
That was funny, too. Except grandmother came into it, I think it got better. I mean, well, the episode before it, the sleepover, and then the grandmother, I think those were really, really the best ones. And I really liked the grandmother. Was a really unique character. I like her,
Roger, you have any sense to throw in before Brittany gives us the rundown?
Not really. No. Everybody said anything. Everybody has said what I thought I would say.
All right.
All right. Well, basically, I'm kind of with Brandon a little bit on most of this cat family we've seen before. They're not that unique. The brother I've seen almost as much as I've seen the sister in anime. Dime a dozen. I'd almost say that if you watch more Yuri anime, you're going to see a lot more of that brother type out there. It's sad to say, but you'd see it a lot more there. Mother,
right out of Vampire Knight, he looks like he.
Yeah. A little bit with the yaoi as well. You'll get that personality with the brother from a yaoi series. Those who don't know, Yuri yaoi, girl love, guy love concepts. You'll see that. You'll see the personalities come out there. With the father, you get a bit of the overprotective. We've had a couple of series we've already done that had sort of the overprotective father. Very much Son Tendo was an overprotective father. So I mean, we've kind of seen that. The mother's probably the most unique out of them, I'd say. But at the same time, I've seen her so many times. It's the whole family is a bit just bland to me, and the grandmother I've seen dozens of times. I mean, there's an ongoing joke, especially in '90s anime, to have the old person with magical powers be young again, and sort of have a look towards the main character. I mean, if a good example would be if you go down to Tenchi, and you look at Tenchi's grandfather when he goes young. He looks exactly like Tenchi. So I mean, it's not an unheard of thing to see that in anime, and for me, it's just like, okay, it's there. It's marking off check boxes.
The Tenchi's grandfather is much more amusing.
Yeah, Tenchi's grandfather is far more amusing. But I mean, it's playing into check boxes and cookie cutters, which the series for me does. And I mean, before we get further in the characters, I want to talk about the family's house, of all things, particularly the background of this. We are seeing in the anime always it bathed in moonlight, which basically looks like it's literally cut out of paper. And it looks horrendous the way they've drawn it. It literally, I don't know why, but every time I saw it, I was like, why is there a white outline around everything?
Well,
And it just annoyed me.
At least in this particular anime, the family home got blown up.
Yeah. I was happy when it got blown up. I was like, good. Have some new animation. Put in some work. The final episode, they actually did some animation work.
Yeah.
I was proud to see it. But at the same time, it was, atypical Japan and CGI, where CGI is just a mess for most of the cases. If you want good CGI, check out Trigun Stampede. There's some good CGI from Japan.
Now, I admit, I've seen some much worse CGI in anime.
Oh, there's some horrible CGI out there from Japan.
Fireworks. Actually, one of my favorite series, Kirin Revolution, was, in my opinion, ruined by going all computer animated. It just did not look.
I mean, Berserk. Any of the Berserk animes outside of the original one, just look horrific because they're CGI.
I mean, the original one had to cut corners.
Also, like Knights of Sidonia too. I think the CGI looked fantastic and ethereal and different. I guess I'm one of the few people that did like the new redraw of Berserk. I did think that the sound effects and the darker moody and more storyline fill out was definitely a delight to behold. Especially the Berserker armor. I was pretty happy to see that.
I mean, to me, one of the best examples of computer animation in anime is Lupin the First, basically. That movie was beautiful. But if you compare it to the Ghibli movie that was offered around the same time...
that earwig thing?
Yeah, earwig. That one looked...
horrendous, man.
Way horrendous compared to the...
Well, like I said, check out Stampede. It's the latest series that's out now. That's CGI. Looks amazing. If you've seen what was it? The arcade. I'm trying to think of the series that was done on Netflix.
Arcade Girl.
No, not Arcade Girl. It's the popular one that was last year.
Castlevania?
No, not Castlevania.
That's the one about the girl who was the one who was really good at the arcade, and then the guy.
You're talking about Arcade Girl? What was it?
No, not Arcade Girl. Arcana.
Sorry, I keep thinking Arcade Girl because you talk computer animation. That was all computer animated and not really great looking.
I forget that, but there was a great series on Netflix last year. Top of the rated. It was based off of League of Legends. Um, I forget the name on the top of my head. But yeah, amazing CGI, same concept. I mean, Cyber 99 was great. CGI as well.
Well, if you really need to talk about CGI, I want to talk about the Sword Art Online Ordinal Scale. I think that was bang up one of the best CGI I've seen in anime yet.
I don't remember that one off of CGI.
I got an opinion on the family as well. If I can.
Go ahead.
Okay. So to be the opposite of you guys, I actually found their dynamic more unique, but I've not seen anywhere near as much anime as you guys. So, the gothic girl thing, even in live action stuff, doesn't happen too often. I usually like the character when they do it, so I think that's why I like this character. And the father, that trope has definitely been beaten to death. In live action, anime, cartoons, you name it. The overprotective dad is just everywhere. Music, songs, uh, thinking Madonna songs, overprotective father. And the mother to me is super unique. And the grandmother. So I mean, maybe not to you guys, but they are to me. So yeah.
Well, like I said, it's checkoff boxes.
It isn't to me, but I mean, I get what you're saying, but I just
Yeah.
don't have the knowledge of a bunch of other animes to go by, so it seems more unique to me. Now, Karin, with her constant crying, like that was the thing I hated about animes in the first place, was shit like that. So that definitely. But I like their dynamic with each other. I really like her dynamic with her sister. The little sister, big sister. I really like their dynamic together. And I do like how they're disgusted with their older brother. Yeah, his trope is definitely a trope everywhere as well. So his is not really unique. But he does show a caring for his sister when he tries to, get get her back when he goes out looking for her and tells him to stay away from her because they want her back and all. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do because she should be able to make her own decision, but he was doing it out of a place of caring, not out of being greedy or anything else. He was actually caring for her. So he does have some redeeming qualities, at least, but he is definitely a lech, and
I also thought that brother background episode was unnecessary. Not because it wouldn't have.
No, it was weird. It was definitely a weird episode. Like, oh, he fell. I thought they were going to talk about he fell for a human girl or whatever. And it was this guy, and he's upset because he thought she was a girl. I'm like, what? That was a really fucking weird episode. Like, super fucking weird.
It works in a longer running series, but he didn't need to be fleshed out anymore because the series was ending not long after that.
Yeah, he really didn't need it. It was definitely out of place and weird. But I was gonna say that as far as the house, I know it's not. I mean, I'm not an animator like you are and stuff, but I see things a little differently. I mean, I think it's kind of interesting for the lack of animation with it. I think it kind of works for the kind of house it is, like kind of like a haunted house type thing, and I don't know. I think the flaws in it work for it. That's just my opinion on the way the house looks. And the grandmother, I fucking love her. I fucking love the grandmother. She's just awesome.
I would say that personally, I would say the house is kind of a mixed bag. Like I agree with the point that it looks very unrefined, especially on the exterior shots. But there are times where the interiors are downright atmospheric and it actually works. It's not. It's definitely a minimalist animation compared to where they could have gone. That's for sure.
You definitely tell they didn't do a lot of work on it, but like I said, it just kind of. I think it kind of works for them on this one. That's just me. I just kind of like it. I mean, It's kind of like the way they just did the laziness. Just kind of worked for that. Normally I wouldn't, but I don't know, for some reason it just kind of worked for that house, just because it gave it more of a haunted feeling. I think, being a little more lazy.
You saying something, Brittany?
I will say that the brothers story, because I don't think we really need to cover much about it. The individual side story of the brothers, that's straight up a yaoi story. As one of the probably the only person in the group that would be watching yaoi regularly, I can say, yeah, I've seen that about 1,000 times in yaoi stories.
Yeah. So you're talking about the one kind of Ren's reflecting on. Yeah.
You will always have the macho-esque guy, cool guy that fall for the pretty feminine guy at some point, and yeah.
And even the guys in that silly club that was trying to recruit them, they all definitely fit stereotypes too. And even the friggin' head bob kid who doesn't say anything but has a friggin' rose in his mouth all the time.
Oh yeah,
it's like Honey Senpai. I mean, you see,
yeah.
The school council guy.
Right. But let's go ahead. I guess at this point, we should probably cover what does. There is plot. That it's not a plot heavy show. But the earliest big plot points, which are covered in both the anime and the manga, are basically Karin meets Usui. She reacts by having a very big nosebleed much sooner than she expected. He helps her clean it up. And it kind of starts and meanwhile, there's the whole thing, not long after that, there's the whole thing of his mother getting bitten because Ren kind of forced Karin into that situation. They didn't know it was his mother at the time. They just found someone who seemed that Karin reacted to as they were walking around. Meanwhile, Ren was kind of forced into that by Anju, who looks out for Karin and tries to help her out. And all this leads to an interesting situation where Kenta or Usui suspects that she's a vampire because he saw her, I believe, when she was biting his mom, if I'm remembering correctly. He saw this.
He saw her. He saw her with the older man too.
He saw her with another guy too.
He thought they were like having like some kind of affair at that point. But he did see that as well.
He comes to suspect that she's a vampire. She's still trying to figure out desperately how to make him happy and stumbles upon the idea that he doesn't get enough to eat. And when she gives him food, it makes him happy. So she starts making lunches for him. And then kind of between all of this, Anju kind of behind the scenes kind of orchestrates the solution. Gets her parents to agree reluctantly, as they do, that basically they let Usui into their confidence. I almost said let him into their world, but no, they don't quite do that. But they do let him into their confidence, and they basically make very clear to him that he will look out for Karin during the day to the best of his ability and nothing else.
Especially the dad.
That's more of the Henry's part of it. But basically, so they start this sort of interesting relationship where they are friends, but it's more like it turns out they work together too. So they're like they're at school together and they work together. They can't get away from each other. And then you come to find out that the Kentas live at the base of the hill where the house where the Makas live. So they're literally next door neighbors almost. So there's all these reasons why it just makes sense to, instead of trying to dodge him and erase memories and all this, just trust him. And so that is the first major, I guess, plot point, is trying to, of all that coming together. And like I said, that's pretty much the part that is covered almost identically in both versions. It really does come together pretty well that way. And I believe it's kind of at the end of that Winter makes his entrance. And
then the show kind of turns to a bad place. I would say so.
But basically, Winter, as we kind of mentioned, is a vampire hunter who's very brash, who's very showboaty.
Outspoken.
What's that?
Outspoken.
Outspoken, yes. Total showboat, does not, as that thing that Brandon loved to play all those years. Winter could say something, and then I can just hear, I think it was Sam Jackson. It's like, I don't have the facts to back this up. He is he's a character. I think someone already mentioned that he is actually afraid of blood. Like afraid of blood.
Yes, he is. He passes out the first time.
How are you going to be any kind of hunter and be afraid of blood?
That's what I was saying.
And he is. I won't say he's 110% awful at what he does, because he's not wrong that there's vampires nearby. And there are times where he comes close.
He does spot the grandmother. He does get her. He does
get her, yes.
He doesn't know she's the grandmother, but yeah.
Of course, she wasn't exactly hiding.
No, boy, he did figure that out. But
Right.
I mean, his darling Karin, right in front of his face all the time, is a vampire, and so he's surrounded by them and he doesn't know.
Right, exactly, yes. And then, like I said, you have several other plot points. We've talked on several of them already, various ongoing things. The show almost is as really, a lot of times when you get into kind of rom-coms and those kind of things, you could almost say that there's a strong slice of life aspect, and a lot of this show is kind of that. It's a sitcom for much of its length, and yeah, it's not as plot driven as it could have been. And I think that's part of the issue. We were talking earlier. I think Roger was making a point about being kind of an uneven marriage between humor and horror. Part of the issue there is that they do tend to fall into one mode or another per episode, and they don't really try to go full tilt down both paths at once like you can do and should do in a horror comedy. They kind of, some episodes are almost pure comedy and very little horror at all. I mean, it does make it seem a little more what's the word? I guess almost schizophrenic at times. I will say that. But anyway, as far as plot, any comments on plot up to this point, really?
Well, I'd like to make maybe an observance. For all its kind of like blandness, this show does give some shockers. Like when the Elder Marker or Elder Sinclair stabs the vampire family with a stake and shoots them. The burning of the vampires in the sunlight. Sometimes even Karen's transformations, that seems kind of creepy too. It's just that it's kind of interesting when you have suddenly you have a show that's supposed to be based on comedy, suddenly has this really dark scene, which I really kind of like. Whoa, here we go. There's some interest in the show after all.
Yeah.
Leonard's grandfather going around killing everybody like towards the end of the series was very
Yeah.
Whoa.
That said,
I wanted to say that I 100% agree with that. Like I was just like, oh my god, they're killing everyone. They're killing you. And then when Anjo was killed, I'm like, no. I was really fucking pissed. I'm like, they fucking just killed everybody. Like I totally fucking bought that they were all dead.
yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? I mean, the grandmother was like, okay, she was stabbed once, but then it didn't seem like she was coming back. And then all of a sudden everybody else was killed, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then I'm like, I was expecting Karen to like fucking bite him. Like I couldn't believe that he talked her down. I'm like, really? Like he just killed her whole family. Well, they're not dead, but she didn't know that. Neither did I. So yeah, and her transformation too was pretty fucking badass. And that episode definitely, I agree. It definitely seemed out of place because it went really fucking dark. I was like, I can't believe they're ending the show like this. So I was like, what? I was like, is this
wait, there's more.
Or something? Right? But yeah, I was happy when they came back because I was like, I don't know, that was just a fucked up way to end the show.
You were happy? I wanted it to go darker. I wanted the family to be slaughtered. I wanted to just rip the guy's throat out at the end, and then we close credits. That would have been a great show.
I didn't want to rip the guy's throat out, but they could have brought them back afterwards, and no one would have felt bad about it.
I can think of two strong examples, one of which we covered on this particular program, which was Higurashi When They Cry, where it went much show ever does, but it was a similar thing of you be bopping along, having good old time, having comedy, and then out of nowhere it got dark.
Yeah, but it switched out much quicker. It didn't spend the whole series like that, and then the last two episodes.
Right. Well, another example of one where you had a series tonal shift that came out of freaking nowhere, and it was an example of an anime going off manga to its arguably to its detriment, although one can argue because in their own right, the last 3 episodes were kind of solid. Negima is a good example because as long as it was following the manga, it was fairly upbeat and fun and cheerful and horror elements, but you wouldn't call it a horror series. But it got bleeding dark in those last 3 episodes where they just straight up killed off a major character out of nowhere. And it's like, okay. I don't feel like this one ever went as dark as either of those two did. Even when they killed off most of the family, it was so brief. They undid it so fast. They didn't even give you the rest of the episode to marinate and then have a final like OVA episode or something to, they brought them back like 5 minutes later. And it's like, the last episode is a hot mess. It does have a couple of great moments, but it is a hot mess. And like I said, the phrase "jump the shark" absolutely applies to that episode.
Honestly, if the last episode was what we got in all the episodes, it would have been far better. Honestly, it was just
ridiculousness.
It was a ridiculous premise trying to turn Karin into a vampire. I mean, it was kind of a silly premise. This was tacked on just to get Elda in there.
It's tacked on. It's tacked on, but at the same time, I was waiting for something like this for the show to do something with these characters.
I was taking a read about what they did at the end of the manga versus this. And it was was interesting, and I admit the manga had a lot more interesting characters. You had a couple half vampires. You had the different vampire families warring with each other, and manga's blood production was because she was supposed to be like a character that if vampires drink her blood, they would be able to become fertile and have children because that was running out. So that the point was other vampires end up abducting her and to use her blood to, have children of their own and drain her until she was dead.
So she's the vampire Viagra.
Exactly. Well, actually, in a way, the plot point was shockingly similar to the main plot of the Deers manga. But it's Carrera, the fact that Carrera had 3 kids was a big glowing signal that, hey, there's something different about this family. And that's Yuria Tachibana is the half vampire who showed up just after the point where the story diverged, and she would have been such a better character than Winter. I liked her as a character.
A piece of wood would have been better than Winter.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But at any rate, so we get into, I will agree. There was not much in the way of major. I'm having trouble thinking of like overarching major plot. It's more minor, like the character interactions that went for several episodes sort of deal. But the introduction of Elda Marker late in the season, I think it was kind of just after the midway part. Or a little.
It was episode 18, which
So even
I was like, yeah.
And Elda again, it kind of gave a bit of it was not only amusing, to some of us at least, but it did kind of help kickstart the actual final, such as it was, the final plot. Because with her backstory, we're introduced to the Sinclair's ancestors. We're introduced to their history with her, and by extension, the Marker clan. We got a little bit of a taste of that old school human vampire interactions. Some of the more horror elements, as we've seen pointed out. But you also get that hint of she might know something about why Karin is the way she is. Of course, at first they try very hard to hide that from her. They don't want her to know that Karin is different. They don't want her to know that she lives in the human world, that she has a human, we'll say, liaison.
No, they're boyfriend and girlfriend by that point. You can't.
Well,
you can't argue with that. They're boyfriend and girlfriend.
I think her parents would have argued with that, especially Henry. But Elda, okay, we mentioned a couple of them. Elda's appearance does give us a couple of great moments. We have the thing, that battle between her and Carrera, where you see the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. That is a universal thing that we've seen in many sitcoms over the years. But the whole idea that Carrera had been responsible for imprisoning her for so long, the whole idea that Anju immediately signs on with, let's just kill her. But one of my favorite parts in the whole series, because Ren is a douchebag. I don't care for Ren. He had met her when he was a child. They say he was 4 when she went to sleep the last time. And she apparently had treated him in the way that Elmira would have treated a small, fluffy animal. And love him and squeeze him forever and ever and ever. And when Ren walks in the door and sees her, the look of utter dread on his face, I love that moment. And he runs away, and she goes right after him. And later she comes pouting back into the house. She caught his sleeve, but he got away. I don't know. I was amused by this. But at any rate, yeah, and then we got that final bit where Victor shows up. He sees that Winter really is not living up to his name. And he basically says, fine, I'm going to go kill them myself. And then you get that big battle between him and Elda, which seems to culminate in her death. And then they have the big, we're going to turn Karin into a proper vampire using this spell that Elda found, which, of course, Victor comes along and tries to interrupt the ceremony, and it gets bloody, and then it's not. And you ultimately find out that no, this was not the right spell. It's not a spell to make her a real vampire. It's a spell to increase...
Make her poop scrubs.
Yes. Which I'm sure Elda was not wanting to give that spell away. If she had known what it was. But anyway, so yeah, that really does kind of cover the plot of the series. I'll be honest. I think we've hit most of what actually, quote unquote, happens. There is the requisite pool episode. You got to have a pool episode in high school anime.
And
There is the episode. What's that?
The Christmas episode.
There's the Christmas episode. You got to have the Christmas
Cool
episode.
culture episode.
Yeah. Well, the culture is actually a multi-part because the Elda introduction coincides with the school culture festival. Although there is that amusing moment where Karin is actually tapped to be a vampire in a play, and she's fired for not being convincing as a vampire. And I find that kind of amusing too. But anyway, so does anyone else have comments on the overall plot or things they would like to mention that I might have glossed over or left out?
Again, I'll let others talk first.
I got nothing to say.
Okay.
Here's the thing. When you put together a series, an animated series, or any series in general, one of the first things you need to have down first is an overarching plot if you're going to tell a story. This series, I don't know if they ever put one together. They put one here and then there and then touch here a little bit. It's okay if it's a joke a minute, not episodic or, episode to episode, not something that's going to carry on from story to story. It just felt so lacking in plot. And that is what really brought this down to me. I just am screaming, where the hell is the plot? What am I watching this for?
Right.
And I never really saw it until the grandmother appeared, at which point I'm like, there's the plot. Why are you hiding it all the way towards about the end of the series?
Well, they also, and again, I mentioned Negima, and Negima is not a bad one to mention for this because it was similar. They adopted the manga very, very faithfully until the middle of a major story arc. And then they went off manga and they didn't have any moorings and they just figured, well, let's wrap it up this way.
Well, I mean, they do that with a lot of anime. I mean, they did that with Full Metal Alchemist. They did it with a lot of other stuff.
Well, with Full Metal, they got a lot further into the story. I think
not really. They only got to Greed. That was what, before they diverted.
That was what, like 20 episodes in, 30 episodes?
I don't remember how long the first original Metal Alchemist when Greed was entered.
I'm
Yeah.
Used.
I think it was around. No, I thought it was around 25 or 26 episodes.
So right around the halfway mark.
I mean,
That was a longer series, and I think it was earmarked to be a longer series from the get-go. It seems like, but the point being that yes, when you start adapting a manga without really knowing where it's going,
you're gonna get a train wreck, like Karin.
well, you might end up with one. Yes, and that unfortunately. That unfortunately, I think, is what happened to this one. They started adapting it, and they didn't really feel the need to they didn't really feel the need to invent a plot right out of the gate, because they were like, oh, we'll just follow the manga. And some manga do take a while to get their plot bearings. You know what I mean? Like, and you know. I've read the entirety of Negima, and it goes way beyond the extent of that first show. It's much longer.
And I mean, you don't need to have something big, but most slice of life, if you watch it in slice of life, they don't have plot line to plot line. They do episodic. So I mean, you don't really see something that's going to carry a plot point all the way through with a slice of life series. Which the series kind of tried to be.
I think Slice of Life maybe, but I think the idea of calling this a sitcom is not a bad one. And sitcoms,
if it's a sitcom, it's a very poorly comedic sitcom. It's not got very much humor that's going to be great to stick with you. The jokes are very miss, and if you're betting on the big winner to be winner of all things, you failed in that comedy.
They did fail with him. Yes, they did fail. Like I said, there were some moments, I think, where they hit big. But there were some where they whiffed big.
Yeah. It's in a way, it's kind of interesting how they've got it set up at the end, and I do think that they could have continued with this series if it had done well enough. I mean, the manga had a very kind of bittersweet ending. It was happy in some senses, but it was unhappy in others. And this one kind of just ended on a relatively generic happy note, which was good.
It kind of ended on, well, let's go forward as before kind of ending. And I know I've seen some of those, like shows where you're like, there's no way this will end well. And then it ends up basically, oh, okay, well, as you were. And this one kind of does do that, and I will admit that's a disappointing way to go.
Well, actually, I do remember the manga ending. It was a bit more happy because Maka and Karin
Maka and Usui end up together.
They end up together, but
they're outside of the vampire world.
Yeah, and she has to be forced to think that her parents are dead. And
Karin's memory is wiped, if I remember correctly.
Her memory is wiped.
Oh God, they did a memory wipe.
And then of course you have their daughter having the hots for Usui.
A father's girl.
because basically of something else that happened. That was the spirit of the psyche, basically, which was the vampire equivalent that Karin was.
Because she was double personality inside of her. She had a second personality. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, you're telling me the manga did something that is what I hate of manga. A lot of manga end that way, especially romantic manga. For some reason, they do the mind wipe of a character at the end a lot, and it just pisses me off. Instead of getting them to be a couple, it's like, oh no, they don't remember each other.
Oh,
like-
well, they do. It's
Oh, they
just
don't remember
she
each
doesn't
other.
remember her parents. She remembers they leave all the memories of Usui, and they fix it so that she thinks her parents died. It just erases the thought of her being a vampire because she ends up having the ability. Basically, she ends up being a normal human that can grow old, and they want to spare her from basically them being young forever and her growing old and dying. So yeah, I mean, they get married.
Woo! Trauma. Let's put trauma into our character in the end.
Yeah. Well, like I said, though, they
But considering they wanted to
bittersweet.
be a like big vampire rape session on her at the very end of that series, yeah, it was enough trauma as it was at the end for her.
right, and it still didn't bother me near as badly as the ending to Vampire Knight Guilty.
Oh, that was a terrible ending. That was like
Yeah.
this ending is world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We refuse to acknowledge the ending of Vampire Knight.
What? That's a great show. It was awesome.
The first one was good.
Talk about Guilty.
That twist at the end of Guilty was horrid.
I just can't think that there was not much of a flawed show. But oh well.
Anyway,
Hey, I'm glad somebody liked it a lot.
Yeah, I did like that show. Ironically, I thought the show was drag.
I'm impressed because I liked the show going up, and then the ending came, and I was like, "Wow, is this show bad?"
yep.
You talk about a turn that was like, you talk about a turn that left me reeling.
No, Vampire Knight does still have one of the best enders of all anime. So it does
amazing ender, yes.
Yes.
Ending thing.
But anyway,
Just bad ending.
right.
Well,
Anywho, so are there really any more? I guess we could probably start thinking toward wrapping up. Are there any more comments anyone has on character, plot, or any of that stuff?
I would go into animation, but I've already kind of covered all of it.
Okay, I was going to say, if no one does, we can do a quick recap on the production. Which I will say, I don't think I've really mentioned it yet, but I will agree that when it comes to the actual animation, Brittany, I defer to you on whether, on the particulars of the craft. But from my perspective, I've seen worse. But I will say that the character, the ability of character to stay fully on model is kind of weak in this show. They could do a lot better than they did with that.
Staying on model, staying in the background, and not having them pop into the scene, because I cannot stress how amateurish that is. The only way it is doable is if you have a character teleporting, but we're seeing people walking in on the street, popping into the scene. And I mean, it's not acceptable in a video game when you see a character pop in and all of a sudden. It should not be acceptable in an anime at all.
Okay.
yeah. Well, I mean, to me, whenever I look at these, and I admit, unless it's Speed Racer level, I usually am able to ignore most animation issues. I can sort of tell when animation is super good in a series. Like Demon Slayer is like 80% animation.
Evangelion and Rasapon and all those great shows that you can put cell work in anime.
Right.
Yeah,
But
it's like an anime that does not have a whole lot of budget, but it does. I guess they did get the job done in a way, but the backgrounds really suffered and the foregrounds was focused on.
well, I mean, even Berserk. I mean, the original Berserk cut corners majorly. but I still really enjoyed the anime, and I've learned that I can do that most of the time, except for something like Speed Racer for me. That's just too basic.
I've seen some anime that's really basic. I was like what was it called? Star Ocean, for instance. Basically, the people were just moving with a sheet of paper, kind of like they actually didn't have movement. They just had the cell kind of across the screen.
Well, I mean, let's throw a Netflix series under the bus here. What is it? It's Record of Ragnarok, where it literally is. We take the character and we twist the cell around. or we just move it around all across the paper and make it look like a horse is moving without actually moving it, or have slideshow animation, which is just we show a picture and then show another picture for a fight scene. No, that's horrible, especially for the manga. That is Record of Ragnarok. Animation. It needs to be animated. Let's just put it that way.
And I will.
I would not give this a failing grade, but I'd give this a D- in animation. This is not getting a failing grade. If it went slideshow on me, it would have failed.
Oh my God.
One thing I will say is back to the opening and ending themes. The ender is there's no motion in it at all. It's simple watercolor stills, but it works for the song, and it's a nice, cute ender. But the opener, I felt like they really were lazy with the animation on that, and it's one of the issues I have with the opener. That and the heaps upon heaps of gratuitous nudity that really don't need to be there. It makes it look like a much more risque show than it is.
I have to say, I agree with you there, Jacob. I sat here watching the opener. I was worried somebody's going to see me walking by watching the opener and be like, "What the hell are you watching?" I'm less worried about people watching me watch To Love Ru uncensored.
And the opener to Love Ru is pretty freaking risque. But in that one, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's less nudity than there is in this one.
But while we're talking about that, as far as music goes, I know we've talked about the opener and ender. I don't mind most of the music for this. I think that the music fits. I kind of like the puppet showing that they show at the very beginning of it, but I do find it weird that they decide to use the sound effects from the animated scenes over the opening song, which does annoy me. But I don't mind the opener and ender theme wise.
And I love the music they play on the eye catches. It's so upbeat and peppy.
Yes. Again, I like the puppet show aesthetic, and I think that's something that they could have gone with more with the series. Maybe use it for transitions or things like that. I think that could have been an interesting thing that they could have factored into this to make it more unique and stand out.
The music was there. There's nothing that screamed at me as memorable. I can't fault the music. It wasn't catchy enough for me to remember it. It wasn't, horrible enough for me to also remember it. So.
All right. Well.
All right. So I guess we've pretty much covered most of this show decently well. So it's probably that time where we want to talk about what would be our favorites. And I guess we'll go with favorite scene and or moment and or episode, whichever if you have a strong feeling about an episode or if you just want to single out certain moments. favorite character, and feel free to say least favorite character too, if you like. And then we'll go ahead and say, what would be probably your favorite in terms of the way they're done? What would you say is your best depiction of vampires that you've seen in media?
Oh, that's easy. That one's easy.
Okay, let's go with you, Brittany.
All right, vampires in media. I'll give you that right away. Dracula from Castlevania Netflix.
All right.
Holy shit! No better vampire, in my opinion, than that Dracula. Well done, well put together. You feel for that man, but at the same time, you understand the hell and brimstone that he brings forth with his power.
Cool.
But I mean, that's talking about a better series. Favorite scene? God damn, this is the hard one. Probably when everybody died. In my opinion, when everybody died.
That's a wrap.
Except for the
favorite character. I'm gonna go with the only one that could act, which was Usui.
Okay. All right.
Least favorite character. Well, that would be Winner.
Oh man.
Yes, he won something oddly. All right. How about you, Kroll? We'll just go to the left.
Well, you said vampire media. You like anything, not just anime?
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually a very tough one. let me go with my favorite.
If you've seen other anime versions, you could always focus.
No,
on
I haven't really. That's why I was asking because rather go with other stuff. I don't know. I think the master in Salem Lot.
Okay.
That's my Nosferatu is pretty close to those are pretty fucking scary. And the overvamps from Buffy were pretty close to those as well. So I fucking love vampire stories and movies and stuff. So I've seen a lot. So yeah, I think I like those. I mean, I like all kinds of vampires, but the scary ones like those are pretty cool. I like them. That's why it sounds like one of my favorite horror movies. But this show, I'm gonna go with two episodes or a couple episodes. The first episode is the sleepover. I really laughed at that one. That was really funny. That was pretty much the best episode up until that point. And then when the grandmother came in, those were pretty good too. Like all the episodes with her before she left were really good. So I really like those. I already stated my opinion about when everybody died. I did not like that. But somebody did. Yeah, and favorite character is Anju, with the grandmother close second. And least favorite character, I will definitely agree, Winner. He's not a fucking winner. Like I said, I call him Winner. So yeah, definitely the worst fucking character. Very close second is Karin. Because of the crying and she's the main character. I always liked to
I can try and do her voice too.
Please don't. Especially
All
the
right.
crying. The voice ain't that bad. It's just the fucking constant crying is what drove me nuts.
Well, just
Well, that's the part I can get down.
You can keep it. Keep it in.
Her voice in the English is at least a full register lower than it is in the Japanese.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, if you don't like high voices, you would really hate her in the Japanese.
Oh,
I would really hate her
Voice
in
in
the
the
Japanese.
Japanese bothered
I would
me.
really hate her in the Japanese, yeah.
But it bothered me watching her in English because I was like, that doesn't really sound like her. But anyway.
Actually, I didn't think either sounded like what I would have wanted her to sound like.
Right.
I would
But
have wanted her
I
not
don't
to
like high
fucking scream.
Japanese voices either, so
Yeah.
so anytime I hear one like that, it automatically turns me off of the character for a while.
All right. So, like I said, I'm continuing left. So, Roger, you be next. What would be your favorites?
Let me see. My favorite scene was, I think, was when the Maka was feeding Kenta the yokosoba. It was kind of cool at the cultural festival. It's probably my favorite scene in the whole series. That's all right. My most favorite character probably got to be Kenta. My least favorite character is either going to it's like a tie between Winter and Boogie-kun. You know, this is as irritating as Winter was. Let's see, my favorite vampire anime would be Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. My favorite vampire movie, real life, would have been Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it was very well done. What else? What was the other stuff I had to talk about?
You did favorite scene, right?
Yes, it was the feed of the Maka feeding Kenta the yakisoba in the cultural festival.
I think that was it. I think you got them all.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, if we had to do this again, if you ever watch another vampire show, God's sake, please let's watch Bloodlust. It's awesome. It's everything the show was not. It was everything that it should have been.
We did Vampire Hunter D on Movies Galore, and it would be a nice thing to come back and hit Bloodlust one of these days. I'm starting to get into that.
I've never seen it. I wasn't there when you guys did it on Movies Galore.
That's an awesome show.
you'd like it.
Two movies. You had Vampire Hunter D, then you had Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, but Bloodlust being the stronger of the two. But both shows are outstandingly well done.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I heard it was good. I've never seen it, so it's definitely one that I'd like to check out.
Oh, you'll like Ninja Scroll when we get into that, but Jacob won't.
Yay.
Classic anime, though. Nonetheless, yes. Vampire Hunter D.
Oh, it is. It is. There's no doubt, but not in quite the ways that we would prefer sometimes. But anyway, so is that it for you, Roger?
Yep, I'm good to go.
Move along. And I just realized, you'll see, I don't know what I was thinking. I specifically snapped an icon as I was watching the show, and I just remembered to trot it out at the very end of our episode. But anyway, so Brandon, your favorites.
Well, favorite scenes, I guess the ones in the library where the father kept finding excuses to come up. I thought they were amusing. Favorite character, let's see here. God, that's a hard one. I kind of liked, I guess I could say Usui in a way. I liked Karin a lot better in the manga, but I cannot stand by this character here. The least favorite, it's Winter. There's no doubt in my mind that Winter is my least favorite character. As far as vampires, it's really between D and Alucard from Hellsing, which we did cover this fall, so that was kind of cool. We covered Ultimate this fall. But
that was good.
Alucard is a cool vampire. I can say that. That's all.
All right. Well, we all know that my least favorite character is Winter. I mean, that's not even... No hesitation there.
Hey, he wins something. It's like unanimous.
He's got a popularity contest on least popular.
But when I first saw this, and this is again, and Brittany, you mentioned a few times how stock some of these characters are. But another thing to keep in mind is that you're watching this now after seeing how many scores of anime.
I think I've lost count in about 300.
Yeah. when I first saw this, I had probably seen a couple dozen, maybe more, maybe a couple dozen more than that, but I was still fairly early in my viewing, not as early as Ron is in his, but so for me, some of these characters stood out a lot more. Now I look back at them and go, yeah, okay, that's a trope. But at the time, they were more original. And two that I immediately fell in love with were Anju and Elda. And now, yes, I can tell that they were more stock characters than I thought at the time. But I still love them. I do.
They're great fucking characters.
They're very cool. They both, in their own way, actually really do care about their families. They're both very powerful characters in at different ends of the spectrum in terms of experience. I really like both of them. So I'm not sure who would be my favorite, but they're probably still. But again, even though Henry has been done 1,000 times, I feel for the man. and Usui is that kind of good character that I will admit Karin's voice cuts her out of the running more than anything else. As far as scenes. Again, Ren is a total tool. So the sheer look of horror on his face when he sees his grandmother for the first time in like 20 years, I absolutely love that moment. And again, at the very end, the screen capture I have here of Anju jumping off the roof, getting ready to have a feast because she tricked all of Ren's girlfriends into showing up at once. I absolutely love that scene. I absolutely loved it. And that was the best thing to come out of the changes they did from the manga, I think. There were a couple other. What's that?
So which one do you think shocked you more, that one or in the manga when one of the females that he slept with called him up and said she's pregnant?
Honestly, I would not have been shocked by that. I think you expect that in that situation. He was shocked by it.
He was shocked because they were supposed to basically kind of be infertile in that way, right. So they weren't supposed to do that. So you got a very rude awakening.
If I remember correctly, the one he knocked up was one of the ones that was trying to.
Yeah, she was one of the vampires that was in the enemy family. So the fact that Karin basically did the thing, and then all the vampires became fertile. Yeah, and that did not work out for him.
No, it did not. No, it did not. But I know this version is funnier, I will admit. That one was more, well, serves you right. And as far as favorite, in terms of a depiction of vampires, in terms of this brings more to the table that I was just absolutely fascinated by. It's probably a toss-up between this series and the original Bram Stoker's Dracula novel, because both of them were influential into my different perspectives on vampires. But in terms of the coolest vampire, I gotta go Alucard.
All right. So no love for Dio from JoJo.
I haven't seen
from anybody.
Oh, I have plenty of hatred for Dio from JoJo.
Never heard of it.
And no love for Nyanpire.
Oh, okay. Nyanpire is a close second.
Okay, and that's an awesome vampire.
Talk about your shows that are in desperate need of a release. Discotheque, anyone watching, we want Nyanpire.
All right. Well,
I actually, got one more thing to say about one of the characters that we didn't really mention that much till a minute ago. The puppet Ugo or Bugo, whatever the hell his name is.
Okay.
At first he just kind of annoyed the hell out of me, but there was a couple times where he was kind of funny, and he kind of grew on me a little bit more towards the end of the season. He was just kind of a little more funny, especially when she locks him up and in that room with the rats and shit. that was pretty funny. So I don't know. I just wanted to mention about that character because no one really talked about that one that much. Like I said, it started out really annoying, and I do like when the dad was like the creepy doll said something about the creepy doll. That's what they call it.
Right.
Yeah. Always holding a fucking knife and definitely weird.
Fucking meat cleaver.
Yeah.
Put your knife.
Meat cleaver and
Right.
yeah. And like when he was trying to protect Anju, and he's like, I'll tell her right now. I'll tell your stupid sister.
Right.
That was pretty funny too, right there. I just wanted to mention that.
All right.
Okay. So that, I guess, about does her. Like I said, I thank everyone for coming on to do this one. We waited forever to get Roger, and then Dave ended up bowing out, so that was disappointing, but we still got a good showing.
Yeah, shut up.
Yeah. So what are we going to do? Quick outros, I guess, and then I'll hand it back to you, Brandon. Does that sound good?
Go for it.
Okay. So why don't we do our quick outros? Brittany, we'll start with you.
My name is Brittany Dotson, otherwise known as Danejurous Arts, also known as I Don't Know, the VTuber. We've been quiet for the last few months for good reasons. We've been trying to get things set up. I do have a planned return, but we do not have a planned scheduled return. It's going to be at least by the end of spring into the early of summer, hopefully. Things will be back into running, and we will be back on YouTube, Twitch, doing a lot of streams, including some weird news stories each week. We're going to try and find one weird news story to talk about each day or each week. So tune in for that stuff. It'll be something new and interesting for us to put in there.
All right. How about you, Carl?
Well, I'm Kroll, aka Ron. I haven't been working for the last 11 years. I had a stroke and was disabled, but just recently trying to start up a business on the internet through affiliate marketing. So hopefully that's going to go good. And I come on this podcast and, of course, a couple movie podcasts. Love talking about movies and things I watch. I love talking about TV shows as well. Don't get to talk about those as often. I also I don't have my own YouTube channel, but I'm popping into everywhere else. Always look around, you'll find me. I'm around. So this will be the last time I'll be on this show for a little while. I gotta take a break. Like I said, mentioned the business. I really gotta focus on doing that, and hopefully I can come back again. It's been fun. At least most of them. Not all the shows are all that fun. Like I said, I like this one, except for Karin and Weiner were just horrible. And yes, I know his name is a Winner, but I'll call Weiner fits better.
As I said before, I'll allow it.
Yeah, except he did win at being the worst character. We all agreed that. So
Right.
yeah, so that's me.
And I don't remember, Carl, you might have heard a little bit of this, but definitely when we covered Ranma, I've heard so much about how adding extra manga characters to an anime can bring down the anime for that show and for certain others. But Winter pretty much takes the cake in my experience of one that, why?
I loved Roma 1.5, so I don't have any complaints. I mean, I bought it, so first anime ever. So
All right. How about you, Roger?
Oh, my name is Roger. I've been watching anime for over 25 years. I also run Animes and Collections and Company, a small Facebook group that specializes in large-scale anime, figure, and manga collecting, among other things that have to do with Japanese culture. So I really enjoy coming over and talking about anime with this particular group. And thank you for inviting me yet again.
All righty then. And I, of course, am Kotobukijake. I am the co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World, where we talk a lot about physical media, including anime, through this lovely series of discussions that we've been having. And I keep very, very, very busy. I had actually planned to do more viewing of the English dub for this, but between my full-time job and my job as the co-founder and co-owner of a native plant nursery, and the fact that we are heading into spring and it's going to get even busier. Thank God the next thing we're watching is a movie.
But don't tell them that it's actually spring now.
It's going to be, well, it sure didn't feel like it today. Oh boy. That was some cold winds coming in this afternoon. That was but anyway, of course you can also catch me once a week on Inside Movies Galore, where we did cover vampires last week with the old Bela Lugosi Dracula. So that was kind of a fun one to look at. And anyway, that'll do it for me. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Brandon and do his outro and give us an intro to next month.
Yes, I hope you've enjoyed this. Sadly, this channel's kind of been inactive and will remain so for a bit, but we're kind of back to life for a little bit more because we're getting 2 anime discussions this month, mainly because we pushed Karin back. But we're going to be on the Tuesday, the 28th. We'll be covering Pompo the Cinephile, which is a movie. So that'll be an easier one for people to ram through. We're going to cover To Love Ru this month, but for the sake of allowing people to watch it, that will be pushed to the end of April. So we have some fun coming up. Hope you all enjoyed. Click that like, click that subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye.